wasn't even 8 a.m. and today was already by far the worst day of my whole trip. 3 or 4 hours later, there's an announcement asking for a doctor. It was literally freezing in the rooms. But as the day went on, my food poisoning started to catch up with me. They have to have a credit card on file. They don't accept debit cards, and realized I had a flat tire. I noticed some red bumps on my arm. Me and my father were taken from our cars and put to the ground. They destroyed almost all of our things. Car tires slashed. Oh my gosh. Hello and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here for the first time, hello. My name is Natalie and I post content about travel and aviation as well as some personal and professional development. And today is my first horror stories video. I'm so excited. This is gonna be part of a series where I'm gonna be reading stories that you guys write into me about your crazy travel experiences. I'm gonna read them here on the air. We're gonna react to them real time. For now, since this is the first time that I'm gonna be doing this, I'm just gonna be reading things off of Reddit and I'm just gonna pretend that they're writing into me. I'm gonna start them with Dear Natalie. That's how we're gonna do it until some things start popping into my inbox. I literally can't wait to hear the crazy things that you've encountered in your travels. If you had any crazy experience, your baggage got delayed, you couldn't find your way around the airport and nobody would help you. You encountered somebody weird on your trip and they wouldn't leave you alone. You went glamping and saw a bear. Like, just anything that you have, I would love to hear about it. Check out the description box below for instructions on how to send your story, and it's literally so easy. You send me an email. Let's get into our first story. This story says, Dear Natalie, first solo international vacation flying from Chicago and connecting in Hong Kong. This series of events made it worse. 1, during boarding, there's an announcement that the reading lights in business class do not work and an electrician is coming to fix it. Okay, you paid for that? Okay. When the electrician is done, the plane is de-iced and pushes back from the gate only to sit there for 10 to 15 minutes before another announcement that the reading lights have gone out again. The plane goes back to the gate. What an inconvenience. The next announcement is that the time we've already been delayed, plus how long the electrician needs to actually fix the issue, plus flying time, would time out the crew and also get us to Hong Kong past a reasonable hour. The flight is delayed until the next morning because checked bags have already been put through customs. They're staying on the plane. Next morning, we take off after a brief delay. 3 or 4 hours later, there's an announcement asking for a doctor. Soon after, there's an announcement that a passenger needs emergency care and will be diverting to Anchorage to drop them off. In Anchorage, the guy is taken off the plane. I later learned from his seatmate that he had packed a medication in his checked bag and being without it for a day messed him up. Oh my gosh. Okay, that literally, if you are traveling, especially if you're traveling international, always take your medications with you in your No, don't take it in your checked bag. No, don't take it in your checked bag. Take it with you in your carry-on luggage. Never put it in your checked bag. Even if you think, oh, nothing's gonna happen, this is gonna be very low risk. If it's your first time traveling, if you already know this, I will say this over and over again, always take your medications with you. It's because of things like this. You never know what could happen. During pre-takeoff maintenance, some mechanical issue is discovered. Again, the time to fix it would time out the crew. We're overnighting in Anchorage. I end up booked in a wing of a hotel that's been closed for winter. It's December and they opened the wing just for passengers from this flight. Oh my gosh, I already see where this is going. It was literally freezing in the rooms. Yes. Everyone was given a space heater. Warm water took a long time. It was miserable. The next day, we departed without incident. We arrived in Hong Kong at the same time as the same flight that left 2 days after ours. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Whoever it is that wrote this was from 11 Ghosts on Reddit. I definitely hope you got some kind of compensation. Definitely they should have comped you for the hotel because you definitely shouldn't have had to foot the bill yourself. That isn't detailed in your story, but I really hope that that's the case. But it sounds like the rest of your trip must have been okay because that was just talking about your layover, getting to Hong Kong, getting to that layover in Hong Kong. So hopefully the rest of your trip went absolutely swell and nothing else happened. This next story says, Dear Natalie, I suppose I should preface this with a warning that my vacation horror story involves a battle with food poisoning. Maybe don't read this one over lunch. Okay, well, I've got my coffee, so if you got a snack or your drink, Trigger warning. In August of 2019, I loaded a bunch of camping gear onto my bicycle and spent the better part of the next 7 months riding 5,300 miles or 8,500 kilometers around much of the US. At night, I most often preferred to wild camp, simply finding somewhere to disappear into the woods for the night, somewhere where people were unlikely to find me and even less likely to care that I was there. One day, I was in southern Washington state heading towards Portland, Oregon. It was one of those days where I didn't really have anything planned other than to ride my bike all day to see what distractions would come up along the way. As I passed through a small town around 11:30, I decided to stop for lunch. I'm vegan, but at that time, Burger King had recently launched its new veggie burger. I'd had it a few times before on this trip and liked it well enough, so that's what I did for lunch on this day. An hour or so after lunch, I realized it definitely wasn't sitting quite right with me, but my mild indigestion didn't slow me down on the bike. That evening, I ended up wild camping in the woods somewhere. After setting up camp, I used the final few minutes of daylight to write in my journal and plan a little bit for the upcoming days. Pedaling 80 pounds or 36 kilograms of bike and camping gear all day, every day is hungry work. I estimate I usually ate about 4,000 calories a day. So usually my evening journaling is accompanied by plenty of snacking, but on this particular night, I didn't have much of an appetite, which concerned me. Yeah, because cyclists in general burn so many calories. I mean, you practically have to be eating all the time if you're gonna be cycling that much. So yeah, I would definitely be concerned if I were you. After turning out my light, I laid down in bed trying to go to sleep, but my slight indigestion quickly took a turn for the worst. I felt nauseous, and eventually it became so severe that I was sure I was going to throw up. I would sit up in bed, hand on the zipper of my tent door, ready to open the door and lean out to vomit. But after sitting up for a minute or two, the nausea would fade away and I'd lay back down. Finally, around 11:30 that night, I did throw up. I rinsed my mouth with water from one of my bottles, drank some more water to help replenish the fluids I had just lost, and laid back down feeling much better. I actually managed to get an hour or two of sleep, but around 1:30 I woke again, feeling even worse. I went through the whole cycle again, throwing up once or more about an hour after I woke. Rinsed my mouth, drank some water, back to bed. Oh, you poor thing. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I woke for a third and final time around 4:30. Thankfully, I never ended up vomiting again, but that soon before sunrise, I knew I was unlikely to get back to sleep. So I spent the 3 hours or so until dawn making new plans. Getting back on the bicycle in my condition was going to suck, but I was out of water and didn't want to stay there in case I continued to take a turn for the worse. There was a town about 30 miles, 50 kilometers ahead, where I planned to put myself up in a cheap motel for the night. But right around daybreak, I started to hear the soft patter of rain falling on my tent. Checking the weather on my phone, I didn't expect it to last long, so I packed everything inside my tent, my sleeping bag and air mattress, clothing, etc. When the rain broke, I could simply toss my bags outside, take down the tent, and hit the road. Just after 20 minutes or so, the rain stopped, so I made my move. After loading everything onto the bike, I pushed it back to the road, got on, and realized I had a flat tire. Just my luck, right? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. But there's an easy fix that I had the tools and parts to deal with, so I got to work. Of course, in my less than ideal mental state, it ended up being a much more difficult process than it had any right to be. And by the time I finally had a flat tire that was holding air, it had started raining again. It wasn't even 8 a.m. and today was already by far the worst day of my whole trip. But there wasn't much I could do at this point other than to put on my rain jacket, turn on my lights, and continue on my way. So I rode for the next 3 hours or so through a cold rain, tired, sick, hungry, and dehydrated. I was miserable. Every rotation of the pedals felt to require Herculean effort, but I somehow kept moving, eventually arriving at that town. I stopped at a grocery store, got a few light foods that would be easy on my stomach, and then went to the motel. I arrived several hours before check-in time, but I must have looked as miserable as I felt, and they let me into a room. I took a long shower, called my mom, and slept 13 hours straight. I would have called my mom too. The next morning I woke feeling much better, and after a light breakfast I felt good enough to get back on my bike. My goal for that day was to make it 60 miles or 100 kilometers to Portland, Oregon, a city I had been looking forward to visiting for some time. 60 miles would be a fairly long day for me, even if in the best health, but the ride went smoothly and relatively quickly, and I arrived at a hostel in Portland in the early evening. By the next morning, I definitely didn't feel 100%, but I did feel good enough to go out to a museum, or at least I thought so that morning. But as the day went on, my food poisoning started to catch up with me. Stop! It came back? No! So I returned to a hostel a bit earlier than I normally would have and spent that whole evening resting. The next day started much the same. Woke up feeling okay, but not great. This time though, I decided against going out, instead staying in the hostel all day, which was a really good call because the food poisoning really came back hard on this day, now in the form of the rather than vomiting. TMI, I know, but you did ask. But that must have gotten it all out of my system, and the next morning I woke up feeling great. Breakfast went down easily, and after a half hour or so I still felt fine. So I went back out to explore the city a bit more and still felt fine after a full day on the move. Wow. Oh my gosh. No, it is the worst feeling nauseous and just anything to do with the stomach and digestion. Like, it is literally the worst when you're traveling. Probably the biggest piece of advice I can give for those who tend to have a sensitive stomach or tend to have tummy troubles whenever they're traveling is just to always have something on hand to soothe that. So whether it's like Tums or Pepto or anything that is specifically tailored to your general things that you tend to experience. This also goes for like ibuprofen and Tylenol and just any other types of medications. And as always, take the medications with you in your carry-on because it can happen no matter where you're at. This guy was on the bike and stopped at Burger King to get the vegan burger that he was very familiar with, and having this burger more than once, and then you would think that that would be a relatively safe choice and that Burger King does it the same across all of its locations, but you can just never be too sure, I suppose. So definitely make sure that you take care of yourself and think ahead to anything that could possibly happen, especially when it comes to your health, because you just never know what could happen, and then being prepared is always the best thing to do. This story says, "Hi Natalie, a couple years after finishing college, my wife and I went back to our college town because a couple friends of ours decided to live there post-graduation and were getting married. Oh, congrats to them. We got a room at the recommended hotel to save a few bucks with the group rate and had a good first night catching up with them. Then, the day of the wedding, the catering group failed to show up and I was volunteered along with a couple other guests to help put the food away and serve. I saw about 2 minutes of the actual ceremony and maybe enjoyed 10 minutes of the reception. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Then, going back to the hotel that night, I noticed some red bumps on my arm from causes unknown, which was confirmed a couple days later as bites from bed bugs." Stop! No! Oh my gosh. The suckers ended up catching a ride home with us and we didn't notice them until we had already done all the things that you aren't supposed to, like throw our bags open on the bed at home after an exhausting drive. Oh my gosh, no. Took 6 months to get them fully killed. Stop, 6 months, which included turning off the AC and running space heaters in the bedroom on a day when it was already 90+ degrees outside to nuke them once and for all. At least my wife got to enjoy the weekend before the infestation. Wow, oh my gosh, that's the worst. So whenever you're staying at a hotel, we don't know what that bed has gone through. More cases than one. I haven't experienced bed bugs for myself. So there's a few things you can do to minimize your chances of encountering bed bugs in a hotel. One, you could take your flashlight on your phone and like a debit card and just check within the seams of the bed and just make sure that there isn't anything hiding in those crevices. I do my very best to not keep my luggage or my belongings directly on the floor. Like you know, laying your luggage down on the floor and keeping it on the floor. Usually at hotels they'll have like this bifold stand where you can open it and then put your luggage on top of that. That's what I usually use. And then I hang up all of my clothes or I'll put them inside of drawers. But I definitely don't like keeping my luggage on the floor and on the bed. Same thing, if there might be a risk. Some people even go as far as like keeping everything in the washroom since bed bugs can't really survive. I don't do that, but some people do. Sometimes that just makes them feel safer. So that's one option. Some people carry plastic bags with them and that's how they they store all of their clothes. Again, it's just to minimize chances of bed bugs getting into your personal belongings. Having hard-sided luggage also helps. You definitely might have bed bugs in your hotel if you wake up with a bunch of bites. If you do suspect bed bugs, definitely be sure to let your hotel know, because they're gonna want to know if there's a certain room that has bed bugs, and they can just relocate you to another room. This story says, "Hi Natalie, my family flew from the West Coast to go to Disney World for a few days, then drive up to the East Coast to visit some extended family we hadn't seen in a while, and then fly home from the airport near my family. There was a shuttle from the hotel to the theme park, so we weren't worried about transportation. We booked a van using a debit card months in advance for the last day in Florida that we would pick up in the morning, pack our luggage, spend the day at Disney, and then drive to see our family. With COVID going on at that time and the constant changing in travel restrictions, we would call customer care about once a month to make sure we were still good with the reservation. We even called a few days before just to make sure there were no last minute changes. Every time we are told that there are no changes and our trip can go as planned. Come the last morning, I leave with a friend to pick up the car while wife and kids eat breakfast and get ready. The car is ready and waiting, and I just have to check in and leave. I get to the service counter and they then tell me that 1, they have to have a credit card on file, they don't accept debit cards, and 2, their cars are GPS tracked and can't leave the state. Neither wife or I have credit cards due to some money problems in our past, and we obviously plan to leave the state. I brought up the fact that we had reserved the car months ago using debit card, and when making a reservation we had to put a destination in for the car, neither of which was a problem at the time, nor were there problems when we called the customer service multiple times. I'm essentially told tough luck, and there's nothing they can do from their end. They just have to cancel my reservation no matter my protests. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Which kicks off 2 stressful hours where I needed to find last minute car rentals or figure out how to change my family plans. The car rental places around were 1, local places that only rented short-term local rentals, 2, at the airport where you had to show a boarding pass that was from the last 24 hours to get a car, 3, would take debit cards, but I couldn't get a car that same day, 4, just didn't have the vehicle big enough to fit the family and or luggage, 5, a combination of the previous numbers." Wow. Finally, someone took pity on us and got us a van that could fit everything and accepted debit cards with the same reservations just in time to half enjoy our last stay in Florida. Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely whenever you're renting a car, I mean, just to address like the GPS tracked portion of your story, yeah, some car rental companies have restrictions on leaving the state versus not, or sometimes you can't exceed a certain amount of miles or kilometers, whatever unit of measure you use. So definitely be sure to look up those things in advance. However, the debit card thing is really strange, how they only accept debit cards and not credit cards. Like, that literally shouldn't matter, especially since you booked it online, there wasn't any trouble, and it should have at least said on the website, hey, we only accept debit cards, we don't accept credit cards. Yeah, that's really weird, but I'm so sorry you had to deal with it. I'm glad that there was at least a company that had pity on you guys and that you guys still got to enjoy your trip a little bit. I know it's really, really weird with the car rental companies. I mean, it's not too often when I rent a car. I honestly do it only when I really have to, or when I'm going to see a customer and when I would really need to have a car on demand. Just because it's convenient, it does tend to get expensive if your stay is going to be a little bit longer. So I only do that when I have to, but these things with car rentals that come up that you just wouldn't think would be an issue, and this story is the perfect example of that. This story says, "Dear Natalie, I was 15 and my family and I went on holiday in Montenegro. In order to reach that country, we needed to pass Serbia, but the GPS malfunctioned and we were diverted to Kosovo, then to Serbia and Montenegro. Kosovo was an active war zone when we passed it." Oh no. And then we've got some bullet points here. Oh my gosh. Okay, trigger warning for aggravated assault. 1, me and my father were taken from our cars and put to the ground. 2, we were threatened with death by the Kosovo authorities. 3, my father was beaten almost to death. 4, they destroyed almost all of our things. 5, they stole all our cash. 6, they were harassing my mom. 7, documents confiscated then retrieved. 8, car tires slashed. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The only luck we had is that my mother called someone who works at the embassy. We were rescued later that day. After we returned, nobody did anything. Nobody. I could have lost my father and my mother that day because some idiots were entertaining themselves. Never going back there unless I am armed. Wow, I'm so sorry. I'm just... Oh God. I'm so sorry that happened. I literally could not imagine. Oh my gosh, I'm literally so sorry. I wonder the GPS that you guys were using, if that was from your phone or if it was integrated in the car. I mean, either way, GPS malfunction does happen, and you know, we rely so much on our phones these days that it's really, really difficult to imagine like looking up your route on a map before going. But you know, perhaps this is a lesson for all of us that no matter how confident we are with where we're going, we should always, you know, try to think one step ahead. And you know, technology, as wonderful as it is, it does fail from time to time, and so printing out a map and sort of getting familiar with the route that you're going to take and having a copy of that printed map with the route that you're supposed to be taking, making sure to avoid those war zones or those dangerous areas. If you're going to be going somewhere, then yeah, definitely do that. I definitely fly whenever I can. I really don't like driving in foreign countries. It's very intimidating. Like, even if I'm going to a different part of the United States, just anywhere, it makes me feel uncomfortable. You know, it's not my car. I mean, I do fine, but it's not something that I typically like to do. And even though flying is a little bit more expensive, you still get where you're going and you're in relatively a secure area, you know, going through the airports and going through security, you know, there's very minimal chance for something like that happening. Or taking the train. But read the reviews first, make sure that it's safe to take the train no matter where you're going, because in some places, like in this area, I'm not super familiar with this specific area, but definitely research wherever it is you're traveling. And for today, that's everything that I have for you for this horror stories video. Be sure to check out the description box down below for instructions on how to send your horror story. I'm so excited to see what you guys have to say. And again, it's so easy. You just send me an email. I'm very much looking forward to reading your stories. If you like this video, definitely be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Definitely stay tuned for the next horror stories video. Thank you so much again for watching. I so much appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video.